What's up, everybody? Hunter here, doing something I've never done before a quarantine conversation, and that's intro it. But it's May 4th today, so it's National Star Wars Day or whatever. So I've been wanting to do an episode about like Christianity and Star Wars for a long time, and so I called Liam Hurley and Rob Kral to jump on a Zoom call, and we talked about Star Wars for like 30 minutes, and it's super fun. And if you like Star Wars, I think you'll enjoy this a lot. If you don't, maybe you will as well. But I wanted to just have one quick disclaimer, and that is that we talk a lot about what we can learn as Christians from Star Wars. And I think that's a really valid question to ask. If you've been around the ministry at all, you know I've always been a huge advocate of really engaging with stuff thoughtfully and well. And you know, I think that there are a lot of really good things that we as Christians can learn from like movies and TV and stuff. And I don't hold them in the same regard as the Bible, not even close. I think that these are all just kind of reflective of the main truth of God's word. And so I think that is something I just really wanted to say before we start. If you think that we're getting, you know, turning into like Star Wars Christians before Christian, you know, I just wanted to make sure you guys know that that's where my heart is. And that's where Rob and Liam's heart was as well. And I just want to read you a quote by a guy named Timothy Gorange. And he has a book called A Theology of Culture. And he says this: culture is concerned with the spiritual, ethical, and intellectual significance of the material world. It is, therefore, fundamental theological concern. And I totally believe that. It is a fundamental theological concern for Christians to watch something like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, or Narnia and say, what can I learn? What is this teaching me about the world I live in? And how can I engage with this from a Christian perspective? And so that is what we hope to do in this podcast. Again, it is 30 minutes long. If you don't like Star Wars, you might want to skip it, but if you like Star Wars, if you like Liam, you like Rob, jump in, enjoy, and may live long and prosper. I don't know how to say it. Welcome. Happy May 4th, my friends, to a very special quarantine conversation. It's May the 4th, which is known as Star Wars Day, and to commemorate, I decided to gather some of the Star Wars brain trust that I know and have just a good old-fashioned conversation about just one of the best, if not the best story told on movies, I think, in general. So I am excited to have Rob Kral here. Hello, Rob, he's actually in the Millennium Falcon right now, which is pretty incredible. There's no COVID in space, I guess?
The Death Star got rid of all the COVID on Alderaan.
Good. Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Those rays will get it. And then obviously Liam and I were going to do an in-person Star Wars podcast, but we scheduled it right for when all this stuff shut down. So we're changing it here, but this is exciting. This is fun. I'm very eager to talk about all of the important things that Star Wars can teach us and all the things that we can learn as Christians from Star Wars, because I do think there are a lot. But before then, gentlemen, would love to just ask for your personal stories of Star Wars. So maybe the first question I have is, what is your first memory of Star Wars, or when did it kind of start connecting with you on a deep level? Liam, let's start with you.
Probably my first experience with Star Wars was like, I think I was like 6 or something. Like for Christmas, my grandma got us the complete saga on DVD, and nice. I was like, what the heck is Star Wars? And my dad was like, oh man, you're gonna have so much fun watching this. And it just was kind of set in stone by then. I have lots of lightsabers and stuff. Still have lots of Star Wars memorabilia. It's just been awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so did you like sit down Christmas Day, watch them, or how did you start to watch the movies?
I think my dad kind of forgot that we had them in the first place, so it kind of took us a month to like start to watch them.
Yeah.
But we watched them. It was just 4, 5, and 6. We didn't have the prequels yet.
Okay, not yet.
So I kind of had to watch the prequels by myself. So we watched that. I watched the Clone Wars all by myself when it was still on Netflix. It was so awesome. I'm behind on season 7, and I really, really want to watch that sometime during quarantine because I have all the time in the world to watch it. But
totally.
Yeah, I had a blast watching it with my dad. Colin Chapman didn't really understand it. They just still kind of don't understand it, but still. So
it's just purely your thing.
Kind of. I
mean,
yeah.
Love it. That's awesome. Rob, what about you?
Well, back in the 70s, I remember going to a friend's place, and he was saying about this new movie called Space Wars. He got the title wrong. and I think already I thought, dude, it's Star Wars. Get it right. And I hadn't even seen it yet.
Yeah.
Anyway, he told me like a brief totally spoiler story. And I'm sitting there listening to the story because there wasn't like this huge desire to go and see it, but everyone was talking about it. And it was huge. And when he told me the brief story, I'm like, wow, that does sound pretty good, you know? And then when I went to see it, I mean, I was just blown away. And, you know, I know us oldies always talk about it like this, but we're seeing it the first time in the theater with a packed theater and all the buzz. And, you know, it's one thing to go to a Star Wars movie now because it's a thing and it's been a thing for decades. And big movies have been a thing for decades, but until like Jaws came out or something around the same time or just before, big blockbusters, there wasn't such a thing. It didn't exist. So going to a movie and being blown away like that was a totally new thing.
Like
and
Alderaan.
Yeah. That's a good example. So it was such an amazing thing that everyone was talking about it. And when you went to see it, it truly delivered. You know, I'm talking about episode 4 as it's known now, but it was just the movie, that self-contained movie, if you will, before all the extra stuff came out, it just works on its own. It really was it delivered as a story, you know, as well. And so it was that combination of eye candy like we'd never seen before. The science fiction up to then was pretty corny. There was serious science fiction, but it was just usually kind of still on the lame side. And just to have it deliver so spectacularly on the screen and with the sound, the dialogue, and then also just to have a story that by the end you just felt inspired by.
Yeah,
and I don't think anyone expected it to blow up like this. I don't think anyone expected it to blow up like this.
No. Well, you know that he did he was ready for a sequel. And it is terrible. It's Splinter the Mind's Eye, which it's a comic you can find. Yeah. It's awful. There's a good YouTube like motion comic video. It's like 30 minutes long where a guy took this. It was originally going to be the sequel if the movie flopped. He was going to continue the story, George Lucas, via comic, and it's very forgettable. I'll just say that. So that's cool. I like what you said. You know, it was a story that delivered, and I think that is something that is just so incredible about Star Wars. And it's a lot like when you read like Jane Austen, and I don't know if you guys ever read Jane Austen, but you read like Pride and Prejudice, and you see all of these things that happen in like romantic comedies now, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm reading what started all of those like things that happen in movies. And Star Wars is that for like huge blockbuster movies. Like when you watch A New Hope, you're like, oh, this was the first movie that did this and did this and did this. And, you know, I don't have my office right now, but I'm working at home, and my little office decorations are the 2 VHSs that I have.
Nice.
These are pre Lucas putting his grimy hands on and cutting them and adding CGI Jabba the Hutts and stuff like that. So
that's epic. Yeah,
super, super good stuff. For me, my first...
How'd you get those?
There's this really niche little store called Salvation Army. And I don't know if you know, they sell a lot of stuff. And I got these there. My first memory is a little bit mix of both of yours, which is funny. I don't remember, you know, I wasn't around in the 70s, but I don't remember what year it was. They re-put them in theaters, the new Lucas cuts. And I went with my dad when I was young, and I just remember him saying like, you're gonna love this. And I was like, okay, cool. And I watched it, and it's the same thing. I was like, wow. And again, I was probably 5 or 6 or something when I saw this, and I had seen movies. I had seen like, you know, Lion King and Disney stuff like that. So I had been used to movies of a big scale, but it was the story that compelled me. It was the story of like, there was just something about it that I was like, man, there's something really like true and good about this. And I really, really, really loved it. And so
on that note, Hunter, when I was saying about the story, because when I was talking about my first experience, I'm just talking about A New Hope, you know, which was just Star Wars, that was it. But again, like you guys were saying, you know, the sequels started coming out, you know, Empire Strikes Back, and the story
Return,
it continued to deliver, you know, so it was like, wow, this story is even more interesting now. I mean, it was already a great self-contained story, but it went even deeper and even more intriguing, like, where is this going? And then with Return of the Jedi, just on your point about story, it's like, wow, the third movie that came out, the conclusion there also just completely delivered. And whatever my mind was blown about story-wise in the first one that we saw, it just went all the way to that third one where I thought, wow, that is a fantastic story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that Empire is probably one of the best sequels ever created.
Oh, it's my favorite Star Wars movie.
Oh, I like Return, but you know.
We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about our favorites later. But I think Empire is my favorite because I think Empire takes the idea of like taking a story that was basically concluded in A New Hope and expanding it in a way that doesn't feel like it completely erases what happened before, but it expands on it. And I think that the opposite of that is Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, where you could watch episode 7 and episode 9 and not have to watch episode 8. Which, I mean, that whoever's, I don't really know what your guys' opinion on Last Jedi is, but I think that's really fascinating that one side of the trilogy does it really well, where they take that story and they expand it, and the other side's like, well, forget Canto Bright and the casino and everything that happened there. Like, we're gonna just move forward. Yeah, whoopsie. Or
my
maybe not.
Grandparents were actually at the town where they filmed that casino scene.
That's
and they
awesome.
sent me pictures.
That's crazy.
And like, I went into theaters. I'm like, I can't wait to see it. And then I saw the town. I'm like, that was very disappointing that scene was where they went and they saw this horrible scene in the movie. So
that's funny. That's funny. Okay. So, Christians for as long as Star Wars has been out, have been dissecting and thinking about kind of the spiritual story here in Star Wars, because there is a spiritual there is a religion, and there's good and there's bad, and there's kind of these big questions of heroes and villains and good guys, bad guys and stuff. And so I'd like to just chat with you guys for a bit. What do you think like the big story of Star Wars is, and what can, Christians kind of take away from it? And again, I don't think that Star Wars is the Bible. There's no definitive spiritual truth it's teaching us, right? I'm not saying like you can put them on the shelf next to each other. I'm saying that, if we believe all truth is God's truth, then God has a hand in Star Wars. So what do you think that Christians can take away from the big story of Star Wars?
You want to go first, Rob?
Liam's like, I'll sit this one out.
Even as a kid,
I'll wait.
I think even as a kid, just watching that first one, once they started to talk about the Force, especially there's a scene in the Falcon here, just down the tunnel there. When they're talking about the Force, so Luke is doing his, he's kind of doing his training with Ben in this room here.
Yeah, right there.
He's keeping his eyes closed, and he says, "You've taken your first step into a large world."
That's a great Obi-Wan
impression. And then Han just says, "Look, kid, I've been around." And when they get into talking about that, I think it would be pretty much impossible for a Christian watching to not feel some sort of somehow some sort of relation to that notion, and people who are not believing in some larger force, or to use the word normally, but once they really start talking about the Force, and by the end of the movie, just totally trusting in something that's unseen. Come on, I mean, I'm not saying like you're saying. You don't put Star Wars scripts next to the Bible and say, they belong on the same shelf. It's a story of fiction. George Lucas talks about how he just borrowed from all kinds of stuff. Right. But he's borrowing from some truths, right? He's not just borrowing from complete fiction. There's a lot of truth in even just mythology that, I may not agree with mythology, but, but there's still some truths in it. And I think it's pretty hard to watch. And then even by the third one that came out, where he's redeeming his father that everybody thought was a lost cause in terms of evil. And he was totally just going after the good. I mean, the fight for good and evil in this is just so out there and such a big part of the story that it's impossible not to relate it to, my experience, at least of Christianity, and having to, believing wholeheartedly in something that's been around for a long time. It's ancient in that sense, but a lot of other people just don't buy into it, or they haven't seen anything that proves it. So they just discard it, and it's at least on that very level. But that was the first scene where I thought, wow, this really is. I relate to this in a deeply spiritual way. Whether that was George Lucas's intention or not, I don't know, but it certainly had an effect on me, and it believe it or not, I think it really helped ground me in my faith as well.
Totally.
Because I know this is a fictional story. We're whizzing around, blowing up planets, but it's just sort of still very inspiring, very effective. And I think good movies, whether they're science fiction or whatever, but good movies just have that effect.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I think my life's changed.
Totally. I think that's so good. I really, really like that answer. I really like that. Yeah. Liam, anything as profound as that?
I'll definitely try. But first seeing Star Wars, I didn't really. You said you sent me a text in first period like a month ago about like how we could relate Star Wars to the Bible, and I'm like, gee, I don't know. Off the bat, I don't really know. But like, I definitely thought about it. I mean, I had like a couple months to think about it, but I definitely think that the Force has definitely similarity to the Holy Spirit, and like it says that everyone is Force sensitive, and like it's just a matter of if you answer that call. And some people use it in the right way, they follow Jesus and all that stuff, and some people use it in the wrong way, and they say like, oh man, I could get forgiven for anything, I could just do whatever I want. And yeah, I just feel like that is a big similarity that I didn't really see at first, but then I started thinking about it. I'm like, wow, that's really, really cool. And there's like this constant like going back and forth between the dark and the light side, and just like them trying to settle things out, and then just like and then like the light side comes out and wins in the end. And I feel like that definitely does symbolize what happens with the Holy Spirit and the Bible. I definitely thought about that for a while, and I was like, wow, that is really, really cool. How that's similar.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I don't know, I think it's C.S. Lewis who says like all good stories are reflected of the best story. And that is the story of Scripture. That is, there is more to this world than we can experience just with our eyes. And, it's this idea of secularism. And I think that Star Wars is a story against the idea of secularism, because I think of one scene in particular that nails it, is when it's like it's in probably within the first like 15, 20 minutes of A New Hope. And they're talking about the Death Star, and Vader says like, the power to blow up planets is nothing compared to the Force. And someone says like, who cares about your ancient religion? And then Vader force chokes him.
Yeah.
To say like, look, there is something more powerful in this world than power, than violence, than destroying people's planets and stories. There is a greater thing here. And I think Star Wars is the story of weakness overcoming power, right?
Yeah.
Like who wins in the end? It's the rebels who have, nothing. And it's the Empire that has everything, and they don't perceive these rebels as a threat because they don't have the same amount of power. Just like Satan wouldn't perceive Jesus as a threat because he's hanging on a cross, but he resurrects in the way of weakness and power. And I think Star Wars is a great, great representation of that. And I think in The Last Jedi, you see that really well as well. And I know this is controversial, but there's a moment in The Last Jedi where the tree gets on fire, right? And all the Jedi texts are gone. And Yoda says to Luke, everything that you need, she already has. Like wisdom doesn't live in this old archaic way. It lives somewhere else. And then it's really fascinating that Rey doesn't have them internalized at all. She actually just steals them and puts them in the Millennium Falcon, just like that. And I think it's an interesting moment where you see like, oh, true wisdom comes in this weak place of the Millennium Falcon. Like that's where all of the truth of the Jedi live. It's in this ship. And I think there's a million things there. And a book I'd like to recommend both of you. Rob, you'll be really interested into this because it's an Australian guy who wrote it, actually. This book is remarkably profound. He is a theologian, an Australian theologian. I've never heard of him at all besides this book, which I really, 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 really like and recommend. It's called The Gospel According to Star Wars. Faith, Hope, and the Force.
That seems epic.
It is so good, and it is the nerdiest Star Wars book and the nerdiest theology book I think you can read. So if you like Star Wars and you like the Bible, this book is a really good mix of them both. $10 on the Kindle. I promise you'll like it.
Dang.
It's a good quarantine read. Yeah. It's really, really good. Really
I'm
good.
actually going to look into that.
You should totally get it. Have your dad buy it for you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, Star Wars is awesome. We love it. And this is, a 15, 20-minute conversation. We can't fully check all the boxes, but I appreciate you guys coming in and talking a little bit about it. And so I want to end with the power ranking. There are 9 Star Wars films that are in the Skywalker saga. We're going to leave out Solo and we're going to leave out Rogue One.
Okay.
And so Liam, worst to best, what is your power ranking of Star Wars? And then Rob will ask you the same question, then I'll give mine. Liam, my friend.
Yeah.
All right. I think it already goes for itself. Number 9 is The Last Jedi.
Okay.
We could have an entirely different podcast, you and I just arguing about our standpoints on The Last Jedi.
What did I text you yesterday or 2 days ago?
You texted me that The Phantom Menace stinks.
I said it's,
I'm
no,
actually going to put that number 8.
I didn't say stinks. I said The Phantom Menace is the worst movie I've ever seen in my life.
I feel the same way, but I feel like the one thing that it gets right is its lightsaber fights. That lightsaber fight between Darth Maul and Kenobi was so good.
It's good.
I love that so much. Number 7, I'm going to put number 7, I'm going to put Rise of Skywalker. I went in with I just wanted to see a good movie, and it didn't disappoint. I saw it in 4D. It was really good.
Cool.
Then I saw it a second time, and it was, okay.
It's on Disney Plus today, May 4th, so you can watch it again.
Really?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to watch it again, then critique it even more. Next is probably Attack of the Clones.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes New Hope. I have my top 3 left. Number 3, I'm going to put Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
Because I definitely feel like that definitely wiped everyone's mind, and it definitely was so good to see. And I definitely just feel like it had a good storyline altogether.
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith is so good.
Number 2, I'm going to put Empire. Empire was so good. Probably one of the best sequels of all time, in my opinion. Then number 1 is obviously Return of the Jedi, which I feel like definitely had really good lightsaber fight scenes, best space fights, and a good story.
Nice.
And I love that.
And
so
Ewoks
much.
too, so.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's why do you think I put number 1?
Liam, that's a great list. Thank you. We disagree on many, and I'm excited for you to hate me after mine.
I'm excited to have another podcast about that.
We'll have to do part 2. Yes, Rob, top 9.
I think I might have to go. It's more dramatic to go backwards like what Liam did, but my mind keeps losing track, and I think I'll have to go the other direction.
Whatever. I had to write mine down
so
too.
New Hope for me is the best one.
Okay.
Because like I was saying before, you could see just that and get the whole thing in terms of the spirit of it. Plus, just as a movie itself, it's just magic the way it sets it up.
Yeah.
Finishes a story, and there's so much more to come, but as a satisfying story that even on a religious level, just about really spiritually is deeply moving in the triumph of the end of that movie, even though there's so much more to come. So New Hope would be first. I just think it's a fantastic movie. Empire Strikes Back would be next. Some say that's a better movie. It probably is a better movie in a lot of ways, but I certainly wouldn't ever tell anyone necessarily, only watch Empire. I would say, hey, you can watch just New Hope, whatever. But Empire second, Return of the Jedi third, and then that 3 is a perfect storytelling trilogy. Next, I would go with Rogue One as number 4. I'm going to throw Rogue One in there because I think it's part of I think it's more part of the real story here than 7, 8, and 9. Oh, whatever. 7, 8. I think Rogue One just
you're not wrong.
In there.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
It doesn't really offer. Having said that, it doesn't really offer anything new. Not really, but it fills a nice little gap. And it does it nicely, and you can walk away feeling, I think, pretty satisfied, even though everyone dies.
It was so cool to watch it in theaters.
Rogue One is great. It's so good, and it would be very high on my list if I included it on my list.
Yeah. The prequels, I didn't enjoy them at the time, and I still don't really enjoy them now, but they've kind of settled in more now, like for a lot of people that settle down when you kind of get over your maybe disappointment and just watch it for what it is. There's still a lot of just great stuff in there.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me I'm not sure. Entertainment wise, I liked The Force Awakens better than any of the prequels.
Oh yeah.
An entertaining movie, and it got me excited again. And, but I think I will go with the prequels before the late sequels. And so,
yeah.
But it's probably, after Rogue One, the next best movie might be Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
And then there would be maybe Force Awakens. This is going to jump around. Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, then Attack of the Clones, and the very last would be the Rian Johnson one.
Last Jedi.
God.
We don't say
Last
the name.
Jedi.
Last Jedi.
Now, it's really weird, though. This is my fluctuating mind. I find sometimes things hard to set in stone because what was it called again?
The Last Jedi.
The Rian Johnson movie.
I'm trying to block it out of my mind. I was so disappointed when I saw it, but when I started thinking about it more and more and flip-flopping away on what I thought, it is interesting in some senses of what it offered new, which was that you don't have to be of blood. And again, comes back to Christianity to me, that you don't have to be born into, say, Moses' lineage.
I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, to be wholeheartedly a part of the Force. And some of what he did there story-wise, even though in my mind I think I see it as a fan fiction story that's not fitting in very well. And I think it was just mishandled. I think some of the guts of what he was doing was brilliant. As a story, not how it came out, not how it was finished, not with Luke throwing his lightsaber away, and there's so much with all the Luke stuff I was very disappointed with. And I think some of that's just lazy. In fact, let's start off with Luke as, he's not who we think he is, and then he ends up being who we think he is. And I think, we need that story arc. And I'm like, why not just start off with Luke being Luke? He's our hero.
Yeah.
But the guts of the big change to me, which was that anyone is part of the Force.
Broom Boy.
Amazing. And the Broom Boy thing, I want to see Broom Boy again, man.
Yeah, me too, baby. He would have been in it.
There's so much in that.
You guys know.
Have you seen before?
That's my
yes.
mixed up sort of splattering of opinions.
It's great.
There.
You have great opinions. I love it. And I think that's really a good moment here for us three to recognize we're laughing. We're enjoying it.
Oh my.
Nothing here is divisive or angry. We're loving Star Wars and we're just talking about it. I will say that if you do like what could have been in the Star Wars world, you go on YouTube and you look at Duel of the Fates, which was going to be Colin Trevorrow's movie before it got taken. Yeah. The script leaked and someone made like a claymation animated version of it. And it was fine, but that it has a lot more cohesion with Episode 8 than Rise of Skywalker does. All right, here's my list. It's almost a tie for the worst movie.
If Last Skywalker is in your top 3, I'm going to be very upset.
The Last Jedi, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so I think for me it is a tie, and I think it depends on where I'm at in the day. But since I just watched Phantom Menace the other day, Phantom Menace is 9. I think it's not only the worst Star Wars movie, but one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. It's aggressively confusing. There's no point to anything that they're doing. I think it is trash. I think that it is stupid, and I don't think it's a good movie at all.
We only got 15 minutes, Hunter. You can't. We have
done way over 15 minutes. This is going to be the longest one yet. Number 8 is Rise of Skywalker because, again, not only is it one of the worst Star Wars movies, I think it is one of the worst movies, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera. And we can get into that later. And then I would do
episode 2 of this.
Yeah, that's the next one. We'll have to do one on Last Jedi. We'll have to do one on Last Jedi because I have a lot to say. Attack of the Clones, number 3. I think the first half of that movie is not very good, but I think the back half's fine. The Force Awakens, again, really reawoken excitement in Star Wars, but is very I controversially, I think it's kind of boring, but I do think that there's some fun stuff in there. 5 is Revenge of the Sith. It's a great movie. Execute Order 66 is one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever. It's so good. 4 is Return of the Jedi. Number 3 is A New Hope. Number 2 is The Last Jedi. And number 1 is Empire Strikes Back.
Gosh darn it, man.
We've got stuff to talk about.
I want to do a part 2. I want to do a follow-up about how you think The Last Jedi is in your top 2.
Oh, my.
The Last Jedi is so good. It is, I think.
It's not.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. In no other Star Wars movie do they ask, how do people fund the wars?
And no other movie.
I think it's so good.
No other movie, period, do like they build up all this stuff and then just wipe it completely.
That was very frustrating. They did that scene after scene after scene.
Oh, man.
But they would lead your direction and then twist it and then, oh no, we're not going there.
I think
like I thought it was gonna be good. Like that scene with like Kylo and Luke, I'm like, this could be epic. And then like it's just more his protection, he dies. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That could have been so cool.
It was cool. The whole movie's great. And I think the irony of and this is how we'll end. I think the irony of the sequel trilogy, so 7, 8, 9, is the fact that the most famous line from 7, 8, 9 is when Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi says, you have to kill the past.
Mm-hmm.
And then episode 9 has Palpatine as the main villain. So, I mean, if that doesn't say how messed up the new sequel trilogy was, I don't know what is. But I think we all can agree that nothing.
Retcon. We need to talk about retcon.
Yes, right. We'll talk about retcon. We'll talk about Last Jedi. We'll talk about all that stuff. Gentlemen, this is double.
Speaker here.
This was a double episode. We're going to put this out. People are going to hate us. They're going to have tons of opinions on Star Wars, but that's awesome. You guys are awesome.
We're going to get a bunch of hate emails about our lists.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much for jumping on.
Well, Hunter, if nothing else, you and I got to talk about that movie a little more. Maybe we do an episode 2 of this. I don't know.
Oh, I'm in. I'm in.
We got to do it.
We got to.
Because as you could probably tell, I love and hate that movie.
Yeah, and I can't wait. We could do a Last Jedi centric one. Maybe we will. If this gets more than
do an entirely different podcast.
If this gets more than 3 views, we'll do another one.
I
can imagine
just us 3 watch it over and over again.
I can imagine people watching this and being like, "Oh, I'll wait till tomorrow. I'll wait for the quarantine conversation tomorrow. I'm done with it."
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, thanks so much. Enjoy your day.
Okay, I got to hit light speed here and get out of here.
Live long and prosper. See you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.
This was so fun.